Welcome guys! Welcome back to the second video of the day. Don't worry guys, I was gonna do a second video today. I hope you gonna enjoy my marshals video that's been uploaded right now. Today we're gonna do, we're gonna continue a World War One series. I'm gonna do a World War Two series as well. I'm finishing World War One just to say it's done, and then we're gonna try to find the interesting World War Two series. Yeah, so 1915, what happened in 1915? I know that Bulgaria joined the war in 1915. That's pretty much it. Um, but I'm ready to learn, man. So yeah, if you like my reaction, like, subscribe, and let's go in.
January 1915. World War I is just 5 months old, and already around 1 million soldiers have fallen.
That's it.
A war that began in the Balkans has engulfed much of the world. The Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire, fight the Allies, Britain, France, Russia, Serbia and Montenegro, Belgium.
Was that the flag of the Russians in 1915? I'm pretty sure it wasn't like a gold-black flag from Tsarist Russia. I think it was different. Or maybe I'm mistaken.
And Japan. In Poland and the Baltic, the Russian army has suffered a string of massive defeats, but continues to battle German and Austro-Hungarian forces. Austro-Hungarian troops have also suffered huge losses and are humiliated by their failure to defeat Serbia. In the Caucasus Mountains, Russian and Ottoman forces fight each other in freezing winter conditions. While on the Western Front, French, British and Belgian troops are dug in facing the Germans, in trenches stretching from the English Channel to Switzerland. As part of the world's first strategic bombing campaign, Germany sends 2 giant airships known as Zeppelins
Imagine you
to
see
bomb
that.
Britain. They hit the ports of King's Lynn and Great Yarmouth, damaging houses and killing 4 civilians.
That's it. That's nothing. I mean, I think it's more about the psychological attack than
At sea,
anything else.
at the Battle of Dogger Bank, the British Navy sinks 1 German cruiser, but the rest of the German squadron escapes.
SMS Blücher. We all know for whom that's named after.
Command of the seas has allowed Britain to impose a naval blockade of Germany, preventing vital supplies, including food, from reaching the country by sea. Germany now retaliates with its own blockade. It declares the waters around the British Isles to be a war zone, where its U-boats will attack Allied merchant ships without warning. Britain relies on imported food to feed its population. Germany plans to starve her into surrender.
It's a pretty good plan, all things considered.
On the Eastern Front, German Field Marshal von Hindenburg launches a winter offensive and inflicts another massive defeat on the Russian army at the Second Battle of Masurian Lakes. The Russians lose up to 200,000 men, half of
That's
them
insane.
surrendering amid freezing winter conditions.
That's fucking insane.
The
What's
Russians
really
have
the
more
most insane to me is that the only time I can think of in the past 200 years that the Russians ever lost while fighting on the Eastern Front during winter was in the First World War. That's when they lost the war with the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, and they lost a bunch of territory. Whereas in the Second World War they survived, in the Napoleonic Wars they survived.
success
first one-
against Austria-Hungary. The city of Przemysl falls after a 4-month siege, netting the Russians 100,000 prisoners. Austria-Hungary's total losses now reach 2 million. Meanwhile, the British and French send warships to the Dardanelles to threaten Constantinople, capital
Gallipoli,
of the Turkish
Gallipoli.
Ottoman Empire.
Didn't work out that
They
well.
believe a show of force will quickly cause Turkey to surrender. They bombard Turkish shore forts in the narrow straits, but 3 battleships are sunk by mines and 3 more damaged. The attack is called off.
Trench deadlock, yeah. That's the most, I think, demoralizing aspect of the First World War, is the amount of casualties that were required to just gain a few feet. You know, to get from one trench to the next one, you'd lose an incredible amount of men.
On the Western Front, the British attack at Neuve-Chapelle. But the advance is soon halted by German barbed wire and machine guns. British and Indian units suffer 11,000 casualties, about a quarter of the attacking force. 6 weeks later, at the Second Battle of Ypres, the Germans attack with poison gas for the first time on the Western Front. A cloud of lethal chlorine forces Allied troops.
Did you know that to survive poison gas, people had to pee in their boxers and then put them over their mouths? That was the way to survive poison gas. I don't know the science behind it, but I know that that's what happened. It worked.
To abandon their trenches. But the Germans don't have enough reserves ready to exploit the advantage. Soldiers on both sides are quickly supplied with crude gas masks as a chemical weapons arms race begins.
Chemical weapons must be this horrible.
The Allies land ground troops at Gallipoli, including men of the Australian and New Zealand.
Churchill was at the Gallipoli, I know that.
Army Corps, the Anzacs. Their goal is to take out the shore forts that are preventing Allied warships reaching Constantinople. But they immediately meet fierce Turkish resistance and are pinned down close to the shore. The day before the landings, the Ottoman Empire begins the systematic deportation and murder of ethnic Armenians living within its borders.
Yeah, that's one genocide that nobody talks about, which is weird to me. Like, why people don't like? People always talk about the Holocaust, which, you know, in the grand scheme of things, it's much larger in size. But the Armenian ones is still as horrifying, and nobody talks about it. I mean, the Turkish government basically, you know.
The Armenians are a long-persecuted ethnic and religious minority, suspected of supporting Turkey's enemies.
It's always the supporting the enemies
Tens
that
of
they use.
thousands of men, women and children are transported to the Syrian desert and left to die.
That's fucked up.
In all, more than 1 million Armenians perish. The Allies condemn the events as a crime against humanity and civilization and promise to hold the perpetrators criminally responsible.
Yeah, it never happened.
To this day,
does it?
the Turkish government disputes the death toll, and that these events constituted a genocide. On the Eastern Front, a joint German-Austro-Hungarian offensive in Galicia breaks through Russian defences, recapturing Przemysl and taking 100,000 prisoners. It is the beginning of a steady advance against Russian forces. At sea, the British passenger liner Lusitania, sailing from New York to Liverpool, is torpedoed by a German U-boat off the coast of Ireland without warning. 1,198 passengers and crew perish, including...
I mean, yeah, it's sad. What the fuck did the Americans were thinking? That the Germans would be like, oh my god, it's an American ship, don't touch. You know, they said that anything that goes within near the waters of the UK would be sunk. Didn't the Americans know that? Like
128 Americans. US President Woodrow Wilson and the American public are outraged. But Germany insists the liner was a fair target, as the British used her to carry military supplies.
Yeah, shut the fuck up, bitch. Like, you knew what she was going into. It wasn't like, oh my god, the tanker got sunk in the middle of the Atlantic. Like, what the hell? It was like 50 meters across from British soil, like, you know.
The Allies launched the Second Battle of Artois in another effort to break through the German lines. The French make the main attack at Vimy Ridge, while the British launch supporting attacks at Aubert Ridge and Festubert. The Allies sustain 130,000 casualties and advance just a few thousand yards.
That's sad.
That summer, above the Western Front, the Fokker Eindecker helps Germany win control of the air. It's one of the first aircraft with a machine gun able to fire forward through its propeller, thanks to a new invention known as interrupter gear. Allied aircraft losses mount rapidly in what becomes known as the Fokker Scourge. Italy, swayed by British and French promises of territorial gains at Austria-Hungary's expense, joins the Allies, declaring war on Austria-Hungary and later the Ottoman Empire and Germany. The Italian army makes its first assault against Austro-Hungarian positions along the Isonzo River, but is repulsed with heavy losses. Meanwhile, the Allies face a crisis on the Eastern Front. The Russians have begun a general retreat, abandoning Poland. German troops...
To be honest, Poland was in such a bad place. Like, they should have abandoned Poland right from the bat and just defended, you know. I mean, you know, in retrospect, it's a little bit harsh to say that, but...
Enter Warsaw on the 5th of August. Tsar Nicholas II dismisses the Russian army's commander-in-chief, Grand Duke Nicholas, and takes personal command.
Oh yeah, nothing's gonna go
wrong there. It will prove disastrous for the Tsar, as he becomes more and more closely tied to Russian military defeat. At Gallipoli, the Allies land reinforcements at Suvla Bay, but neither they nor a series of fresh attacks by the Anzacs can break the deadlock. Conditions for both sides are terrible. Troops are tormented not only by the enemy, but by heat, flies, and sickness. In the Atlantic, a German U-boat sinks the liner SS Arabic. 44 are lost, including 3 Americans. In response to further US warnings, Germany ends all attacks on passenger ships. On the Western Front, the Allies mount their biggest offensive of the war so far, designed to smash through the front and take pressure off their beleaguered Russian ally. The French attack in the Third Battle of Artois and Second Battle of Champagne. The British, with the help of poison gas, attack at Los. Despite initial gains, the attacks soon get bogged down, with enormous losses on all sides. Allied troops land at Salonika in Greece to open a new front against the Central Powers and bring aid to Serbia. But the Allies are too late. Bulgaria joins the Central Powers.
Yeah.
And their joint offensive overruns Serbia in 2 months. That winter, the remnants of the Serbian army escape through the Albanian mountains. Their losses are horrific. By the end of the war, 1/3 of Serbia's army has been killed, the highest proportion of any nation. Fierce fighting continues on the Italian front, as Italian troops launch the 3rd and 4th battles of the Isonzo. Austro-Hungarian forces, though outnumbered, are dug in on the high ground and impossible to dislodge. In the Middle East, a British advance on Baghdad is blocked by Turkish forces at the Battle of Ctesiphon, 25 miles.
I refreshed my memory on what the Sykes-Picot Agreement was. that divided the Middle East, and it was really, you know, what they did to the Arabs that rose against the Turks was pretty shitty. I don't know if you know what happened, but basically there was an agreement that if uh, there were a lot of ethnicities under the Ottomans, a lot of Arabs, in this region and here as well. If they rose against the Ottoman Empire, they'll be able to make their own kingdom. They'll have their own territory. Towards like 1917, there was a secret agreement between the British and the French that basically said we're getting the Middle East. They're up, fuck them, basically.
South of the city.
That's what happened.
The British withdraw to Kut, where they are besieged. The Allies abandon the Gallipoli campaign. 83,000 troops are secretly evacuated without alerting Turkish forces. Not a man is lost.
Nice.
It's one of the best executed plans of the war. The campaign has cost both sides 250,000 casualties.
What the fuck?
1915 is a bad year for the Allies.
Yeah.
Enormous losses for no tangible gains.
That's the thing about the First World War, is just the sheer amount of just nothing. You lose 300,000 people here and there. That's why, when you look and you know the casualties in those wars, the first one, the second one, even the 30 Years' War, which I haven't made a video, but I read about it yesterday, which is insane. Like between 4.5 and like 8 million people died, and that war was like in the 17th century, 1618 to 1648, give or take. So, anyways, the casualties. That's why, when you look at casualties like in today's modern wars, like in Afghanistan, and you see like, the Americans lost 3,000 troops. I mean, I'm not trying to, renege their sacrifice and their duty, what they did for their ideology and their beliefs, but 3,000, dude, it's not, which, I don't, do I want to get political here? I mean, fuck it. One of the reasons why I believe America is acting, how should I put this, so aggressively towards other nations, in a sense that, they're not really afraid of sparking conflicts with nuclear nations, is that the Americans never really had catastrophic losses in war. I'm talking 10 million people, or like an invasion on American soil. Until that happens, it's not really in the psychology of America to be afraid of war, because it's never been on their soil, and the casualties, while they can mount up to hundreds of thousands of people, it's never been like, yesterday we lost 300,000, a week from now we lost another 500, that type of thing.
But there is no talk of peace. Instead, all sides prepare for even bigger offensives in 1916, with new tactics developed from earlier failures. All sides still believe a decisive battlefield victory is within grasp.
I mean, that's the problem. In the First World War, if you lose like a bunch of people, by 1915, like everybody has lost millions, you cannot peace out without gaining anything. Because number one, it will be a disservice to their memory. They lost their life, for absolutely nothing? Yeah. And on top of that, you're already too deep in. It's like playing poker and you already have 80% of your stack in the middle. You can't be like, I fold. Like, no, you're going in, no matter what. If you have pretty decent hands. But you know what I mean? So, by 1915, even if they wanted to end the war, they couldn't do it. So, anyways, I hope you like my reaction. Oh shit, Blackbeard. I want to see that. I know nothing about the guy. Now I'm intrigued. If you like my reaction, if you like my thoughts and all that, like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. See ya.